Had a little bit of a technical difficulty here, but I think we're ready to go now. All right. So good morning again. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Lori Ayers, and I'm your presenter. The subject of our webinar is reporting EPP data for the 2021-2022 reporting year. We will try to cover everything thoroughly today. However, we know that you may have additional questions, including those that may be specific to your EPP. So please send them our way and we will respond after the webinar, either via an FAQ or in a phone call or email if the question is specific to your EPP. Please note that your questions will be captured in the questions section on the GoToWebinar toolbar. Questions or comments placed in chat will not be retained. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording and related FAQ document will be posted on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. Our goals for this webinar are first, to provide the guidance for data reporting tasks this year and identify some resources available to you for reporting 2021-2022 data. Please note that for the remainder of this training, I will refer to the reporting year 2021-2022 as 21-22. Additionally, this is an opportunity for you to gather your thoughts and questions around ASEP reporting this year and provide those to TEA so that we can publish responses for the good of the group. Please ask and we'll respond. And finally, we have some important updates that we want to share with you while we have you as a captive audience. Those will be at the end after we've covered the state reporting requirements for this year. So let's review some relevant terms that I'll be referencing in the presentation today. First, as we all know, EPP is the Educator Preparation Program, which you are here representing today. The CDN is the unique 6-digit county district number that is assigned to each EPP. Every program, including certificate and class within that program, that the EPP offers is under the same county district number. ECOS, E-C-O-S, is the Educator Certification Online System, which houses the educator data statewide. ASEP, or ASEP, is a term for the accountability system for educator preparation programs and is also a drop-down menu in the ECOS for Entities green screen. This is important to know because everything under the ASEP menu locks each year after the reporting year closes and cannot be updated after the lock. Some roles that we may be referencing today are, first, the EPP Legal Authority, who is the ultimate responsible party for the EPP. All official communications are sent to the legal authority, and that individual is the person authorized to sign documents on behalf of the EPP, and they manage EPP staff access to ECOS for Entities. Some EPPs have identified a backup legal authority who can assist with those duties. The certification officer first and foremost recommends certificates. However, in many EPPs, that role may also be responsible for other areas such as admissions, test approval, and/or state reporting. Some EPPs have a person whose function is specifically to report data each year. Whoever does the reporting would need to have the ASEP update role in the ECOS for Entities. Before we get into the reporting detail in the webinar, let's take a step back and get some context. Texas Education Code, or TEC, and Texas Administrative Code, or TAC, require EPPs to report specific information and data to the state annually. Some of the data the EPPs report and TEA collects is used to determine EPP accreditation status. Other data is required because TEA must provide that data to consumers. Either way, it is important that whatever data is reported or collected is accurate. The figure 19 TAC 229.1c contains information about data calculations used to determine EPP accreditation status and the performance standards that EPPs are expected to meet. You are encouraged to review these requirements periodically, but especially if you are new to the EPP. It is important to note that each program within the EPP contributes to the data that is collected each year. So it is important to communicate across the various programs within your EPP to establish efficient and accurate data collection and reporting processes. The figure 19 TAC 229.3F1 contains additional information about data that is required to be collected from EPPs. An important thing to highlight here is that 21-22 is a report year. For the past 2 years, the data for the accountability system has been reported, but all EPPs have received a status of not rated declared state of disaster. This year, based on 21-22 data, EPPs will be given an accreditation status by the SBAC. This slide frames up the continuum of reporting and where we are in that process. Note the gold circle. We are this close to reporting time. The timeline reflects that this reporting year began September 1st, 2021. TEA has attempted to stay in lockstep with EPPs about matters of state reporting, hoping to assist EPPs with a smooth 21-22 reporting experience. In March, TEA published a recorded mid-year update and sent EPPs some mid-year data sets to assist in reconciling the 21-22 data up to that point. Additionally, the IT team at TEA has worked on a number of enhancements to the ECOS for Entities green screen that should provide additional support to EPPs as you ensure all data is reported timely and accurately. Hopefully your EPP staff have been uploading data for all of your programs throughout the academic year, and therefore only finishing touches are required to complete your data at this point. So here we are now in August, and state reporting for 21-22 data is right around the corner. The due date does not change since it is specified in TAC. The due date is still on or before September 15th. And the data you report does not change because, as we just learned on a previous slide, the data reporting requirements are in TAC. The data reporting manual remains the best resource for EPP staff on detail and instruction around required reporting, especially for those that are new to the process. There are useful examples and screenshots throughout the manual. You will find the most recent version of the data reporting manual posted on the Program Provider Resources webpage on the TEA website. Additionally, the education specialists at TEA are always a resource, including for state reporting assistance. When you do need to seek assistance from a live person at TEA, please make your first stop one of the education specialists or me. We can usually provide the assistance you need. If not, we will pull in Mark or Pam or others for additional support. Mark is definitely the expert on data and reporting, but he is only one person, so if everyone calls him directly with questions about state reporting, the call volume gets overwhelming. So during state reporting time, unless you're just calling to say howdy to Mark, please call the education specialists first for assistance. To assist you with reconciling your data, TEA has prepared various data sets. You recently received principal and teacher survey rosters that you could use to verify and request exceptions to the survey data sets. Roster verification is now complete, with all requests for exception due by August 1st. Next, you can expect to see preliminary data sets of observation data delivered by secure email to your legal authority or primary point of contact and to the certification officer or designated ASEP reporting staff by Friday, September 2nd. This will include information about all observations reported up until that point. EPPs can easily generate an admission report to verify their own admission data, so TEA will not send those data sets. For this purpose, as well as for ongoing communications, it is important for your EPP to keep TEA updated when there are changes to these staff. If you've had a recent change in legal authority, primary point of contact, and/or certification officer, please make sure we have that contact information. Your education specialist can process those updates. This is an overview of what you should have completed or should be in process of completing to prepare to submit your data on September 15th. First, compile the number of applicants to all of your programs between 9/1/2021 and 8/31/2022. As in past years, the EPP must report the number of folks that applied to the EPP throughout the 21-22 academic year. This is for all programs within your EPP, such as your undergraduate teacher program, your post-bac principal program, your school counselor program, and so forth. If you have not tracked applicants throughout the year, you'll need to gather that information before September 15th. We'll talk about this in more detail on another slide. The second to-do item says to ensure all candidates admitted to the EPP have a complete admission record. Some of you have created admission records but have not reported subject-specific content hours and the related GPA of your teacher candidates, or have not reported SAT, ACT, or GRE scores if applicable. Admission records should be reviewed and updated where necessary so they are a complete and accurate representation of all required areas for that candidate. Note that upload to edit functionality was implemented last year that allows the EPP to make edits to the editable fields in admissions using a bulk upload process as well as manually. Update candidate status on the finisher records list. For the 21-22 reporting year, candidates in all programs and classes within your EPP are either finishers, if all requirements were finished at any point in 21-22, or they are other enrolled if they are still in process of completing requirements. If they left your program for any reason during the year, they should be removed. Note that we just completed a correction to the glitch around the removed function on the finisher records lists. EPPs should now be able to see all candidates they removed during the year. The last to-do item reminds you that reporting observations is required for all teacher and non-teacher candidates completing clinical teaching, internship, or practicums in all of your EPP program areas. If you have not started uploading observations, you are strongly encouraged to do so now. If you wait until the last minute, ECOS may be overwhelmed with users and tends to slow way down at that point. Remember that an enhancement to ECOS last year changed the data validation dates so that the system now accepts observations that occurred all the way until 8/31. So if any observations were or are completed this summer, they should be reported in the 21-22 reporting year. Let's take some time now to step through some of the areas in which you will be reporting data. The first area is admissions data. The first item of business when a candidate is admitted into your EPP is to create an admission record. This must happen within 7 calendar days of the candidate's formal admission date. When you create the admission record, ECOS courteously places that candidate onto your test approval list for each test required for the certificates you identified in the admission record. The status, of course, is eligible because the EPP determines test readiness and when to approve testing. Additionally, the candidate is automatically placed onto the finisher records list with a status of other enrolled. It is important to note that you have until August 31st to create admission records for candidates that may have fallen through the cracks and were admitted with no admission record created. You will have until September 15th to create an admission record for anyone admitted with an admission date in the last week of August 2022. EPPs are encouraged to carefully review admission records early in the data reporting process to pinpoint any corrections that TEA may need to assist with. If our team gets overwhelmed with last-minute data fix requests, then we cannot possibly complete every request by your reporting deadlines. So what should EPP staff be doing right now? Well, as we said earlier, you will need to ensure each candidate in your EPP in any program, including teachers and non-teachers, admitted from 9/1/2021 through 8/31/2022, has an admission record that completely and accurately reflects the area or areas in which the candidate was admitted and all applicable admission data for that candidate. Admission records can be created either individually by using the admission search option in ASEP, or if you have a bunch to enter, prepare a CSV file and upload them using the upload admissions option. Remember I said earlier that a system enhancement lets you edit some fields using an upload. For example, if you did not include the SAT or ACT scores for your teacher candidates, then you can go back and add them now via upload. A note about SAT, ACT, and GRE scores. If your university requires them for admission, then you must report them. Additionally, the GRE is required for admission into a non-teacher program if the applicant has a GPA that is less than 2.5. When applicable, this GRE score is also reported. As a reminder, because the admission record is supposed to be created within 7 calendar days of the formal date of admission, all of your candidates should already have an admission record. That should make your data review and reporting easier. To make reporting easier and to help you problem solve issues, let's look at some areas in which common errors occur. First, you should not be able to create an admission record for someone that is enrolled in the same certificate area in any EPP. This is intentional and helps EPPs keep data clean. The related error message is reliable and also conveniently identifies the county district number of the EPP in which the candidate is already enrolled, so that you can reach out to the other program as necessary to straighten out your records. A second area in which we see errors is in the upload process, particularly in the format of the CSV file. As you all know, the CSV file is sensitive to formatting. So for a no-hassle way to check the formatting, open your CSV file with Notepad. Stray marks, spaces, and lines are easy to spot in the Notepad version. In that case, just correct the error in Notepad and save. We will have a slide later that shows that process. Also, when creating the admission record, the certificate and route identifiers must agree. The certificate route must agree with the cert license ID selected for the certificate, and the certificate must agree with the role. Notice in this picture, the candidate is enrolled in an alternative certification program seeking LOTE Spanish. The cert license ID for LOTE Spanish offered in the alternative route is 1262, which is different than the cert license ID for LOTE Spanish for an undergrad route or a postbac route. Finally, in this example, LOTE Spanish is a classroom teaching certificate. If you were to choose, let's say, principal as the role, you should get an error message. We are frequently asked if the admission record should be deleted or changed if the candidate leaves the EPP after admission or changes certification categories after admission. The answer is no. The candidates leaving the program or seeking a new certificate category does not change the fact that the candidate was admitted in the original certificate category. Remember in an earlier slide, we pointed out that creating an admission record places the candidate into test approval and onto the finisher records list. If the candidate leaves the EPP, you will need to manually or through a bulk upload go into test approval and into the finisher records list and change the candidate status to remove. If the candidate changes certificate area after admission, you would not alter the admission record and you would not add a new admission record. Instead, retain the written change request in the candidate's record in your EPP files, and then go into test approval and into the finisher records list in ECOS and update the information in each place to reflect the new certificate sought by the candidate. You can add or change either manually or using the bulk upload. Remember, admission of a candidate is an event. The admission record is a snapshot of that event, so should not be deleted after the fact, unless you made a mistake. Most of the admission record is set up so that it cannot be altered or deleted by the EPP after the EPP has saved it. If you created an admission record in error, such as if the person was never admitted, or if you created the record with an incorrect TEA ID number, then you would need to contact your assigned education specialist at TEA to delete that record. If you keyed in the incorrect route, for example, you would also need to contact TEA to correct that. So let's take a look at some areas of the admission record that the EPP should be able to edit. As you are reviewing admissions data to ensure it's complete and accurate, you may need to edit various numbers, either due to initial data entry errors or to add forgotten data such as SAT, ACT, or GRE scores, if those are applicable to your EPP. If so, you can access the editable fields yourself, either through admissions search or through the maintain admissions options. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you may use upload to edit admission records. To clarify some confusing areas that generate questions each year, overall GPA and admission GPA are both required to be reported for candidates in all certification classes. These numbers may be the same or they may be different, depending on whether you used the overall GPA or the last 60 hours GPA for determining admission. Subject area hours and subject area GPA are required to be reported for teacher candidates only. SAT, GRE, and ACT scores are required to be reported if they are collected. If any of the other fields must be edited, such as if you entered postbac but really intended to enter alternative for the route, or if you find the admission record should never have been created to begin with. As we said on the previous slide, your TEA education specialist can make the edit for you. Submit the request in writing via the help desk to educator preparation. To use the feature that allows you to edit several admission records simultaneously through the upload process, just select Upload Admissions from the ASEP drop-down menu in the ECOS for Entities green screen. Select the current year and then Update Admissions from the new Upload Type drop-down menu. You will just browse for your CSV file and upload. On the CSV file used for the update, any information you enter for the candidate in an editable field will be recorded as an update and will be captured in the audit trail in the ECOS for Admin's purple screen. So as I said earlier, each year we receive questions about whether or not to report SAT, ACT, or GRE scores. The applicable rule requires that if your entity collects them, you must report them. If you're a university-based EPP and your university requires any of those scores for admission into the university, then your EPP must report them as admission data for your candidates. Additionally, if any EPP requires these scores for admission, such as the GRE required for admission into non-teacher programs, if an applicant's GPA is below 2.5, then you are required to report that score for the applicable candidate. Admission data is used in several ways. If you have not visited the data dashboards on the TEA website, I encourage you to check those out. You'll find them in the consumer information page, which can be accessed as an option on the Texas Educators drop-down menu. Additionally, the EPP is responsible for maintaining an incoming class average of 3.0 or higher, which can be verified through GPA data collected from admission records. And finally, the technology fees paid each year by the EPP are determined based on the number of candidates admitted in all certification programs within the EPP during the year. It is important that admission records are complete and accurate. Please take the time to review records to ensure they are complete and accurate before data is due on September 15th. The second area in which data is reported is candidate enrollment. The EPP must report the enrollment status of each candidate. This requirement has been in effect since the 2009-2010 reporting year. Prior to that year, only finishers were reported. You will find your old finisher lists up to 2008-2009 in the archived ASEP if you ever need to look at them. The current finisher records list is the mechanism for reporting enrollment status of candidates. It is accessed via the Maintain Finishers link on the ASEP menu in your green screen. The finisher records list that we use today is one list that can be filtered 4 ways. You can generate a list that shows all candidates, or you can filter the list to show only candidates with other enrolled status, or only candidates with finisher status. You can also see candidates you have removed. As previously mentioned, the removed feature broke, but we fixed it. So you should be able to see your removed candidates once more. Thanks so much to the EPP that notified us of the problem. As I've said before, we rely on our EPP partners to notify us when systems within ECOS are not working properly. The IT team at TEA is responsive and efficient and can usually correct issues in a timely manner. For your convenience, the Upload to Update feature is available to change the enrollment status of multiple candidates simultaneously using a CSV file and bulk upload. Your candidates can be placed on the finisher records list in a couple of different ways. First, the candidates designated as other enrolled at the close of 1 year will automatically populate the list as other enrolled in the next reporting year. In other words, they roll over. This is at once a good thing and a not so good thing. It's good because it saves the EPP work not having to create a new enrollment list each year. This feature can be not so good, though, when forgotten candidates who have left the program are not removed from the list and thus continue to roll over year after year unnoticed. It's important to review this list each year and make sure it is an accurate representation of candidates enrolled in your programs. Since this can be a big lift for some of the larger EPPs, perhaps consider using the export feature to export lists that you can compare with your enrollment lists in your local database. Remove anyone that is no longer enrolled. The second way an enrollment record may be created for a candidate, as previously identified, is by creating an admission record for the candidate. In doing so, the candidate will be populated onto the finisher records list with a status of other enrolled. This is one of the features of the admission page that is a fantastic time saver for EPPs. Please note that the EPP cannot add a new person directly to the finisher records list without creating an admission record. Additionally, a new feature coming to ECOS in the fall will require candidates to have an admission record and an accurate enrollment record. We'll talk more about that at the end of this webinar when I go over some important updates. So what should EPP staff be doing now? Well, for the state reporting 21-22 data, you should verify and update where necessary the status of every person in each of your programs. Remember, after the 21-22 reporting year locks, you will no longer be able to update status. When reporting the enrollment status of candidates, remember that everyone remaining in your program by August 31st is either a finisher because they finished all of your requirements by August 31st, or they're still working on requirements, so they are other enrolled. Another way to look at candidates' enrollment status is this. Anyone who left the program or was asked to leave the program during 21-22 should have been removed from the finisher records list. All those remaining as of August 31st, 2022 need to have a status. The status is finisher if they finished all requirements at any point during the year, or other enrolled if they're not finished. Note, finisher status is not dependent on standard certification, and finisher status is not dependent on passing certification exams. There are 3 different ways to add, delete, or update records for candidates on your finisher records list. First, you can search for an individual candidate using Student Search and update the record from the resulting student maintenance screen. You can also filter and generate a list via Maintain Finishers and change candidate status for an existing record from there. Just remember to save it when you're finished. And finally, you can use the Upload Finishers bulk upload option to add or delete a record or change the enrollment status for one candidate or for multiple candidates simultaneously. On a related note, the finisher records list should reflect exactly who is in your programs and who has finished in any given reporting year. It should also accurately reflect each certificate and supplemental certificate sought by each candidate in that reporting year. Remove candidates from the list or correct the information about candidates on the list as needed on an ongoing basis. Candidates who leave one route and then re-enroll in a new route may appear on the finisher records list as seeking the same certificate in 2 different routes in 2 different years, which is okay. For example, think about the teacher candidate that graduates non-cert from a university-based undergraduate program because the candidate did not complete clinical teaching. Then that candidate is admitted the following year to the alternative certification program at that university to complete requirements in the same certificate area. That candidate will be listed on the finisher records list in the traditional route and then in the following year in the alternative route. Candidates who quit the program or who are asked to leave the program should be removed promptly at the point in the year in which they leave and should not be abandoned to roll over year after year on the list. And remember to remove their test approvals too. During a recent check-in with a team member, we were discussing customer service trends, and she noted she had logged 4 calls in that week where candidates were attempting to enroll in EPP B, but already had an enrollment record on the finisher records list for EPP A. In each case, the candidates were not aware of their enrollment with EPP A or noted they had been enrolled but left EPP A long ago. TEA receives these types of calls often. The screenshot on this slide is an example that I pulled from an EPP green screen recently for this training. This EPP candidate was admitted in 2012 and has been carried on the finisher records list, but has no other activity with this EPP since that time. There are active test approvals from long ago for this candidate, likely unknown to this EPP. Before we move on to the next section, let's take a minute and summarize some key ideas regarding reporting candidate enrollment on the finisher records list. First, if candidates leave your program, remove them from your finisher records list. Second, when candidates finish your program, update their status to finisher on the finisher records list. Third, if a candidate changes the certificate sought, including content area or route, update the finisher records list to reflect the new certificate. And finally, if a candidate adds another certificate area, add another row to the candidate's record with the additional certificate. So the third reporting area is the data associated with the annual performance report. This report is a summary of candidate enrollment as of the end of the reporting year and includes the number of EPP applicants as well. TEA populates most of the information in this report from data that you report in admissions and on the finisher records list. The only numbers that TEA need to complete this report but cannot access via ECOS are the applied numbers. There is no place in ECOS for an EPP to report the number of individuals that applied to each of the programs within the EPP. So the EPP will need to report those to TEA outside of ECOS on or before September 15th. So what should you be doing right now? Now is the time for you to gather the number of applicants that applied to each of the programs within your EPP during the 21-22 academic year. For example, that would include the number who applied to your undergraduate teacher program, your post-bac principal program, your alternative educational diagnostician program, and so forth. So let's look at how you'll report those numbers to TEA. Thinking through the preparation process sequentially, an individual must first apply to an EPP before he or she can be admitted. EPPs are required to report the number of applicants that applied to your EPP for all programs during the academic year. The numbers are reported as a total or all number, and then must also be disaggregated by gender and race ethnicity groups. The number of applicants, or the applied number, must be equal to or greater than the number of persons admitted. Logically, an EPP cannot admit more candidates than the number that applied to be admitted. The process for you to report applied numbers this year will be the same as last year, in that you will use the spreadsheet to submit the applied data. You will find the current version of the spreadsheet posted toward the bottom of the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. Download a copy of the spreadsheet to your computer. When you open the spreadsheet, you will see that it contains two tabs at the bottom. The first tab contains instructions and asks for you to complete the information in the yellow highlighted cells. It is important to complete this information so that TEA knows who submitted the data. Under the second tab, there will be a chart with yellow highlighted cells in which you can record your actual applied numbers. To complete the all number in row 1, you will count the number of individuals that applied to each program within your EPP during 21-22. For example, you would include all of the individuals that applied to your teacher undergraduate program, your teacher alternative certification program, your principal postbac program, your superintendent alternative certification program, and so forth. You will report all applicants as one number and will not report them broken out by program. Next, you will disaggregate the all number by gender and record the numbers in rows 2 and 3. Then complete rows 4 through 7 by disaggregating the all number by race ethnicity. If you don't have demographic information for one or more applicants, you still need to include those applicants in the all count, but you would not include them in the demographic group count. In that case, your demographic group numbers would not add up to the all number, which is acceptable. When you're checking your work to ensure that your data is accurate, keep in mind that the total of rows 2 and 3 cannot exceed the all number in row 1. Likewise, the total number in rows 4 through 7 cannot exceed the all number in row 1. Also, remember to check the applied all number in row 1 against your admitted number in ECOS to make sure the applied number is greater than or equal to the admitted number. To submit the spreadsheet containing your applied numbers, use the TEA Help Desk system. This is the best process to use since the Help Desk does not cycle out tickets the way our email does. So we don't have to worry about losing something you've submitted in the avalanche of emails we get during state reporting time. Save the spreadsheet named as in the example on the screen, which includes the EPP county district number _APR_applied 2022. Submit the saved spreadsheet to data reporting via the educator testing and preparation programs tile. There is no need to notify your education specialist that you've submitted the file, since the help desk system will send us an email when your ticket arrives. Data around field supervision is the fourth main area that you will report. Formal observations for all candidates completing clinical teaching, internship, or a practicum during the 21-22 academic year must be reported. You will report all formal observations with dates from 9/1/2021 through 8/31/2022, including any extra formal observations that were completed in addition to the required minimum number. As we consistently recommend, we hope you've been uploading observations as they occurred throughout the year. This is an approach that can help you make sure you have not forgotten anyone so that your EPP can meet your 95% or higher completion requirement for field supervision. So what should the EPP be doing now? you should be putting the finishing touches to your observation data. The data sets you will receive from TEA will help you cross-check your final data. EPPs must report formal observations completed in 21-22 for all candidates who participated in clinical teaching, internship, or practicum. Each candidate must meet or exceed the minimum number of required observations for the type of clinical experience in which the candidate participated. For example, if a candidate completed an internship while holding a probationary certificate, the minimum number of observations required for that candidate would be 3. But if the program actually conducted 4 formal observations, then the EPP would report all 4 observations in ECOS. For your reference, the observation schedules for teacher and non-teacher candidates are found in 19 TAC 228.35G and H, respectively. It's important to note here that although teacher observations must be 45 minutes or more in duration, observations for non-teacher candidates might not be. The TAC requirement for non-teacher observations allows some flexibility in that field supervisors must conduct a minimum of 3 observations that total a minimum of 135 minutes. If you do the math, that is the equivalent of 3 45-minute observations. Data that you upload for a non-teacher candidate could include 1 observation that was 25 minutes, 1 that was 60 minutes, and the 3rd that was 50 minutes. That is acceptable for non-teacher observations, so you can report these with confidence. Formal observations conducted by field supervisors for teacher candidates must be 45 minutes or more in duration for each observation. The observation data that you report should match the data in your records for those observations. You are encouraged to implement quality control measures to ensure observation data is accurate and complete. The EPP cannot add or correct observation data after the reporting year locks on September 15th. And there is no data fix process for TEA to correct or add observations that occurred in a past locked ASEP year. Let's take a moment and clarify some requirements for observations. Under current TAC, observations for teacher candidates completing clinical teaching or internships are always in person, and observations for non-teacher candidates completing a practicum may be in person or virtual. Some rulemaking from the SBEC resulted in EPPs being able to conduct some virtual observations of teacher candidates in the 2021 academic year, but that rule expired and was not effective for the 21-22 year. All observations of teacher candidates in 21-22 must have been conducted in person. All observations conducted by field supervisors in any format must be recorded in ECOS. EPPs will report the observation format as either P for in-person observation or V for a virtual observation, understanding that P is selected for all teacher observations that must be face-to-face. As we saw with the admission data and enrollment data, the observation data can be added either individually per candidate or using a CSV file in a bulk upload process. You will report all formal observations conducted by the field supervisor and not just the minimum number. So if the minimum number of observations required for a clinical teacher is 3, but your field supervisors complete 5 formal observations for clinical teachers, then report all 5. On the other hand, do not report observations conducted by cooperating teachers, mentors, or site supervisors. While it is a best practice to have campus personnel observe and provide feedback on candidate performance, the observations are not reported in ECOS. The evidence of those observations should be retained in candidates' records as part of the completion documents that must be retained per the records retention requirement in 19 TAC 228.40F. Likewise, Many EPPs conduct walkthroughs in candidate classrooms to provide ongoing coaching and support. While ongoing coaching and support is required in TAC, there is no mechanism to collect that data in ECOS, so the EPP would not report walkthrough data in ECOS. Also, remember the field supervisor that conducted the observation must be listed in your field supervisor database, or you will get an error message when you try to add the observation into ECOS. To access the field supervisor database, select Field Supervisors option on the ASEP menu. Remember that a field supervisor that is tied to an observation may not be removed from the database. You should get an error message if you attempt to remove a field supervisor that is tied to an observation. To be successful uploading observations, here are some handy reminders. These reminders were developed from a list of common issues that arise each year around uploading observations. You will find additional tips for all uploads in the data reporting manual. First, remember the candidate must be on the finisher records list as other enrolled or finisher. Second, observations may be entered only into the current unlocked year, which is 21-22. Next, the yellow block is a reminder that observations must be entered into the year in which they occur. If a candidate completed clinical teaching in 21-22, but will not be a program finisher until the 22-23 reporting year, enter the observations for the 21-22 clinical experience now so that they can be attached to the candidate later in 22-23. Likewise, if observations for a current 21-22 finisher were entered last year in 2021, we will find them and attach them to the candidate this year to be included in your observation completion rate. This is, of course, dependent on the observations having been entered in the reporting year in which they occurred. Last year, we rolled out a data validation update, which aligned the observation reporting dates with the academic year 9/1 through 8/31. So summer observations for your superintendent or other candidates can be entered before ASEP locks on September 15th. The green block reminds us that the field supervisor must have a TEAID number to be entered into the field supervisor database. When entering the observation data, remember the observation date cannot be before the assignment start date. And finally, the ocean blue block reflects an important tip that is the subject of many calls received by TEA throughout the year. The observation reporting system sees 3 certificate assignment types for internships: the INT, which is the intern certificate, the PRO, which is the probationary certificate, and the PROX, which is the probationary extension. We get quite a few calls from programs that get error messages and failed uploads because they attempt to assign an assignment type of PRO to a candidate who held a probationary extension, which is PROX. That will not work. If you forget the assignment types, you will find a list in ASEP under the Upload Observations tab. For a teacher candidate who holds an intern certificate, the observation will be added with the assignment type of INT. The first probationary certificate issued to a candidate is a PRO. When a second probationary certificate is issued to a candidate, ECOS automatically assigns it an assignment type of PROX. When reporting observations for clinical teachers, you will use CLIN, regardless of the duration of the clinical teaching assignment. For non-teacher candidates, you will use the NONTCH as the assignment type for a practicum and for an internship, even if the non-teacher candidate held an intern certificate. For example, if you had a principal candidate who completed the practicum while employed as an assistant principal, you would have recommended an intern certificate for that candidate to qualify him or her for the assignment. Even though the candidate held an intern certificate, you would still use the non-teach code when uploading observations for that candidate. There is a link that allows you to pull up a document that reflects the minimum number of observations required for each assignment type. Not that anyone's going to forget that, but nevertheless, it's there as a resource if you need it. There is an option in ECOS that lets you generate a report so that you can check the observations you've entered or uploaded for your 21-22 candidates. From the ASEP drop-down menu, select Observations Report, and then filter the report for the 21-22 reporting year. Select the observation type as View All Observations, and then select the academic year option. Please remember also, as we mentioned earlier, TEA will send an observation data set to you in early September. If you have all of your observation data entered by August 31st, then the TEA data set will also be useful as another quality control measure you can use to check your work. As you may have noticed, the screens in ECOS are receiving makeovers. The observation report screen is one of those. Additionally, you'll notice you can export the report in a CSV file that is formatted the same as an observation upload file. This will allow you to download a list, update the observation information for candidates on the list, then turn around and upload that file to add more observations for those candidates. We hope you're finding this enhancement useful. Let's now take a minute and review uploads. Each of the reporting areas under the ASEP menu has an upload option. Test approval, which is not in the ASEP menu, also has an upload option. If you use the upload observations, upload admissions, upload finishers, or upload test approval features, and your upload files keep failing, check the formatting of the upload file. Sometimes the error messages don't point to the exact issue in a file formatting problem. And I find CSV files to be particularly ornery when it comes to missing data, stray marks, and table additions like column headers. An easy way to check for formatting errors is to first check the Excel file and make sure all cells in a column are justified the same, right or left as applicable. Make sure you've removed the column headers. Next, make sure you've saved it as a CSV and then close the file. To open the file in Notepad, right-click on the file name and select Open with Notepad. You can see in my example that in Notepad, it is easy to see what is populated in all of the fields. Notepad will show you if there are extra spaces or stray marks. This example is an admission upload which requires 16 fields to be populated, even if you're not reporting fields 14, 15, or 16, which are the SAT, ACT, and GRE scores, which are selectively applicable as discussed earlier. In Notepad, you can just add commas as placeholders for data that is not being uploaded so that fields are complete. Notice I added 3 commas to the end of my data set as placeholders because I did not report SAT, ACT, or GRE scores for this candidate. Also note in this file that my GPA numbers are 4s. They should be 4.00. So I could add the additional zeros in Notepad as well. Once I'm confident that there are no stray marks or spaces, I have all 16 fields populated with data or commas, and my numbers are represented to the correct decimal place, I can save and close and then upload this file. For admission records, if your candidate does not have a GPA or does not have subject-specific credit hours, it is acceptable to enter 0 for those values. 0 values are not included in calculations involving those numbers. If you have upload issues and need a second set of eyes on the file, your education specialist at TEA can assist. Remember, if you must submit a CSV file for us to look at, please use the help desk system, which is secure, and protects the candidate information that will be in your data file. It should be noted here that data reporting time is crunch time for TEA specialists too. So waiting until the last minute to enter data and request assistance may result in no assistance by the deadline. As in past years, EPPs may submit data exception requests to remove data points from the various data sets, if necessary. The RFE, or Request for Exception forms, are posted on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. These forms perform best if your Adobe software is updated and if you save them on your desktop first, then fill them in, sign and save, then attach them to a help desk ticket. Your education specialist will review the request and either approve or deny the request with reason. You should receive a return copy for your records. If you run into problems with folks who do not have an admission record and now are not showing up on your finisher records list, you can submit a data fix request to TEA via the help desk. There's a process for that as well. If you need to submit a data fix request to TEA for assistance with editing an admission record, TEA will need some specific information from you. To add a record, create a complete and properly formatted CSV upload file using the instructions in the Upload Admissions tab in ECOS. Submit that file to TEA attached to a help desk ticket. To request a correction to an existing admission record, submit a help desk ticket identifying which piece of the record we're changing and what it needs to be changed to. Also remember that if you change one piece of the record, you may need to change another to achieve agreement. For example, if you request a route change from postbac to alt, you will need to request a change to the cert license ID to match the new route. Be specific with your request. If the data does not agree, TEA staff will not make the correction. Note that an admission record created by TEA through the data fix process does not auto-populate the candidate onto test approval or onto the finisher records list. Once the admission record has been created by TEA, the EPP will need to populate test approval and the finisher records list either manually or through an upload. To submit a data fix request for a correction to the finisher records list for a past locked year, submit the request using the form we have posted on the Program Provider Resources page for that purpose. Submit that form attached to a help desk ticket. So what does our reporting timeline look like this year? I'm happy to report that it is very short. We can attribute this to a few things. First, the use of exception request forms makes processing much quicker on the TEA side. Second, there is no admission data to reconcile since all admission data will be extracted as needed directly from ECOS. And finally, TEA is providing data sets well before September 15th to give EPPs a chance to review, complete, and correct observation data before the due date. Also, we know all EPPs will have implemented quality control on their reported data, so the data should be perfect and ready to go by September 15th. That all said, here's the timeline. You'll get your observation data sets in early September, and then all data must be complete and accurate and submitted to TEA by 5 p.m. on September 15th when ASEP will lock. All data means data for all of the programs within your EPP and includes updated, accurate, and complete admission records, candidate enrollment status on the finisher records list, formal observation data, and applied data. Additionally, your affidavit certifying your data must be submitted with your final data. TEA education specialists will review your data to ensure all data is there and your affidavit of data accuracy. The 21-22 ASEP will not unlock again. Please submit your affidavits to TEA via the help desk. Please be very careful and deliberate about ensuring data accuracy. Admissions, finish your records, and observations are all in the ASEP menu. After ASEP is locked, you will not be able to go back and enter any data into the locked year. Before we close today, let me reiterate some key points that we felt were important enough to repeat. All candidates completing clinical teaching, internship, or practicum, including extensions, require field supervision, which means all candidates in clinical teaching, internship, or practicum will have observations. Admission records cannot be created or updated after August 31st of their admission year. So remember to verify admission records early in the reporting process. This should not be a problem because admission records are required to be created within 7 days of the candidate's formal admission date. Of note here, an admission record can be created after August 31st for a candidate admitted in the last week of August. That record can be created until ASEP locks at 5 p.m. on September 15th. Third, ASEP will not unlock again after it closes on September 15th, so please allow time before September 15th to run quality control checks on your data. Conduct your data reviews and quality checks at least days before September 15th to allow time for last-minute additions, deletions, and corrections. And bullet 4 reminds us, do not rely on upload status results as a quality control measure. Check your work. While there are error messages and warning messages built into all aspects of ECOS for your convenience, including upload status information, we cannot possibly predict all of the things that could potentially happen to an upload. So don't rely on successful upload status as your ultimate quality check. So while I have you as a captive audience, let me provide some looks forward to the coming academic year 22-23. First, we have some tests that are expiring in fall 2022. As you know, we've been engaged in some revisions and updates around some of the certificates that require the additional Science of Teaching Reading exam. Because of the revisions, some old exams are being phased out and new ones phased in. The last step in the update for the English Language Arts and Reading 4 through 8 and core subjects, EC through 6 certificates, is the expiration of the 117 and 291 exams, respectively, this fall. Note the last date your EPP can recommend an ELAR 4 through 8 certificate using a passing score on exam 117 is October 30, 2022. TEA recently sent direct emails to candidates and to their EPPs if the candidates had passing scores on 117 but had not achieved a standard certificate. Qualified candidates and their EPPs are encouraged to work together to achieve certification before the deadline. The last date the EPP can recommend a candidate for the core subjects EC6 certificate using a passing score on exam 291 is December 30th, 2022. To provide a little context, currently the core subjects with Science of Teaching and Reading EC6 certificate will issue with a passing score on either the 291 or 391. After the deadline, that certificate will only recognize an issue with the 391. Of course, the 293, which is the Science of Teaching and Reading exam, is now required in either case. Thinking about the operational aspect of this information, candidates who completed clinical teaching or internships in 21-22 could meet the deadline for either exam if all other requirements are met. Candidates who successfully complete clinical teaching or the full year of their internship in fall 2022 could meet the core subjects EC6 Test 291 deadline if the candidates have completed all requirements for certification by that time. It's important for EPPs to A, get the word out about these deadlines to anyone in your program or who finished the program that is intending to use the 117 or 291 for certification. Additionally, having a plan in place for your EPP, not only for the communication piece, but also a plan to process certificate recommendations efficiently will be important so that all candidates and finishers can use the 117 or 291 for certification if that is their intention. Please let us know if you have questions about the expiration of the 117 or 291. We're happy to clarify and provide guidance around this topic. A recent update in Chapter 228 that will be effective September 1st, 2022, allows field supervisors to conduct up to 2 formal observations for teacher candidates in a virtual format. This update to Chapter 228 was adopted in February 2022, but does not become effective until September 1st. Note that all observations conducted for teacher candidates for the 21-22 year must be face-to-face. After September 1, 2022, EPPs may allow up to 2 virtual observations, but are not required to allow virtual observations. For reporting purposes, EPPs must identify in ECOS whether the observation was in person or virtual. You will recognize this chart as the same chart that was included in the SPEC item in February. It offers a high-level summary of the updates regarding number and format of observations if your EPP chooses to allow virtual observations. Before allowing virtual observations for teacher candidates, please review the entire rule text in 19 TAC 228.35G for the detail about specific requirements related to virtual observations, since some requirements, such as the total number of observations required, may have changed if the EPP allows virtual observations. Additionally, if virtual observations will be allowed, TEA strongly encourages EPPs to provide training to field supervisors regarding conducting virtual observations and the related requirements, since field supervisors assigned to teacher candidates may not be accustomed to performing observations virtually. This reminder is important for all EPPs since it will require you to plan now for the October 2022 implementation. In October, we will begin collecting data in ECOS related to a candidate's clinical teaching, internship, or practicum experience. The clinical experience record will be an additional menu option under the ASEP drop-down menu in the ECOS entities green screen. The clinical experience record will collect data such as the assignment location and assignment start and end dates of the clinical experiences, as well as the identity of the cooperating teacher, mentor, or site supervisor assigned to work with a candidate during the clinical experience. This new feature will be a requirement for every candidate completing clinical teaching, internship, or a practicum in the 22-23 academic year and thereafter. It's important for EPPs to be aware now, since you will have already placed candidates in clinical experiences before these pages go live in October. TEA will provide training to EPPs in late September or early October prior to the rollout of the new pages. But let's take a minute and look over some of the features, including some data you will need to be collecting now so that you're prepared to upload it in October. This is a summary sneak peek of some of the features of the clinical experience record pages, which are in development and expected to be complete in October. There will be 3 new links under the ASEP drop-down menu in the ECOS Entities green screen, one for manual data entry, one for bulk data entry through upload, and a report page, similar to the menu options we have for admission records and finisher records. The clinical experience records will pull data from other locations within ECOS, such as an intern candidate certificate when possible, to minimize duplicate data entry across multiple records. Because observations are linked to the clinical experience, their data will be shared when possible. There are validations built in that link the observation records and clinical experience records. And after the October implementation, a clinical experience record will be required to add an observation record for a candidate. Additionally, some of the observation data currently collected will be moved to the clinical experience record and entered there instead. The clinical experience record will also require that the candidate have an admission record and an accurate enrollment record on the finisher records list. As I mentioned previously, we will have training for EPPs on the features and use of these new pages. Training information will be published in your newsletter. To begin this new academic year, you will need to think about collecting information about candidate clinical experiences now so that you can upload it in October when the clinical experience record goes live. These next 3 slides list the various pieces of information to collect and retain. Since the new pages will have an upload option, perhaps think about collecting the required information now on a spreadsheet, and then in October, save it as a CSV and upload it all at one time. You will need to keep a separate spreadsheet for clinical teachers, one for intern teachers, and a third one for non-teachers, since the pages are constructed to accept the uploaded data in separate uploads. This screen shows the data that will be required for the upload of records for teacher candidates who complete clinical teaching. Please note the name of the cooperating teacher will be required, but the TEA ID for the cooperating teacher is optional only for the 22-23 year, and was made that way so that programs can work on ensuring that they have the TEA ID of the cooperating teacher on file. Remember, educators can see their TEA ID simply by logging into ECOS. We recommend that you collect the TEA ID this year so that you will be prepared for next year. As I mentioned earlier, some of the data required for the clinical experience record will be pulled in automatically from the candidate certificate, which is why the record for a teacher candidate completing an internship requires much less data to be entered by the EPP. The same will be true on the next slide for a non-teacher candidate completing an internship with an intern or probationary certificate. To help you with this task, I suggest downloading your list of interns onto a spreadsheet, add the mentor information, and then save it as a CSV to upload later in October. As stated on the previous slide, the TEA ID of the mentor is optional only for the 22-23 reporting year and was made that way so that programs can work on ensuring that they have the TEA ID of the mentor teachers on file. Practicum data for candidates in non-teacher programs such as principal, superintendent, school counselor, and so forth will be collected in clinical experience records. The data will be uploaded in a separate upload from the clinical teacher records or the intern teacher records. As I mentioned earlier, all non-teacher candidates are identified with an assignment type of NON-TCH, even if they are employed on an intern or probationary certificate. So the NON-TCH assignment type is auto-populated for you for each record. When we developed these pages to collect clinical experience records, we were intentional about minimizing the amount of information EPPs will need to add by pulling it in from other available sources when possible, and also by removing duplicate uploads of information across observation records and clinical experience records. As stated on the previous 2 slides, the TEA ID of the site supervisor is optional only for 22-23 and was made that way so that programs can work on ensuring that they have the TEA ID of the site supervisor on file. Also mentioned previously, remember educators can see their TEA ID simply by logging into ECOS. We recommend that you collect the TEA ID this year so that you'll be prepared for next year. Many EPPs currently use a cooperating teacher, mentor, or site supervisor agreement to collect qualification information. Perhaps think about adding space to that agreement document to collect the TEA ID number too. We hope you found this training useful. Please let us know if you have remaining questions by typing those into the question box or by sending them to your education specialist. We will gather them and create some FAQs to post along with the recorded webinar. Remember, if you need specific assistance as you work through your reports this year, please reach out to the education specialist assigned to you. Also, the most efficient way to reach us continues to be via the help desk. Stay well, and TEA wishes you successful reporting in 21-22 and a successful school year in 22-23.